Today we are going to discuss how climate change affects global ecosystems. But more specifically, how does climate change affect coral reefs? Our hypothesis is global threats to coral reefs are increasing. First, let's begin with some background information. Coral reefs are an important global ecosystem. Even though they make up a small 1% of planet Earth's surface area, 25% of sea life inhabits or is dependent upon these reefs. Humans also depend on these reefs to supply food and to assist in wave erosion control. This map shows the areas inhabited by coral reefs. Each red square represents an image taken by one of NASA's satellites, giving us not only the locations of coral reefs, but also what areas are densely populated by these reefs. As we can see, they are highly dense in Oceania and the Caribbean Sea. Even though coral reefs are such an important part of Earth's ecosystem, they face great danger. For example, of the 704 coral species studied, 33% of them face extinction due to global warming. Since 1968, about 600 square miles of living coral has died each year in the Pacific Ocean. Now, after 1995, coral reef destruction has doubled to 1,200 square miles a year. In some reefs, this has resulted in 80% loss of native species, a number that should not increase. Coral reefs grow less than 3 centimeters each year, so it takes many, many years for a large reef to form. This map shows coral reefs with threats of extinction. Blue shows low threats, yellow medium threats, and red high threats. As we can see, the places with the highest threats are the areas that are dense with human population. Now that we've discussed background information of coral reefs, let's speak of the methods of studying them. Studies of coral reefs are often observational field studies or are conducted in mesocosms. These mesocosms are experimental tools that bring a small part of the natural environment under controlled conditions. With these controlled conditions, scientists can maintain consistent conditions across experiments and avoid highly variable results. By looking at these results, scientists have concluded that global warming is a threat to coral reefs. An increase in temperature creates an increase in ocean acidification, which greatly harms the coral. When a healthy piece of coral is placed in acidic water, the acid eats away the coral's exoskeleton, leaving it unable to support itself and the species that live within them. The ocean's current pH, a measure of the proton or hydrogen ion concentration, or acidity, is about 8.05, but it is projected to be 7.8 by 2100. Though the difference seems very small, acidity is measured on a logarithmic scale. Therefore, each 1 degree of change on the pH scale is represented by a change by a factor of 10 in proton concentration. A change from pH 8.05 to pH 7.8 would then represent a change in proton concentration from the present by a factor of 2.25 or 225% more free protons available. Even though we focused greatly on ocean acidification and its effects on reefs, there are other environmental and human factors that threaten reef ecosystems. For example, even though reefs are accustomed to warm water, any deviation from a narrow temperature range is detrimental to reef health. Since oceans are currently warming, this is a threat to reefs. In addition, we have logging, shrimp aquaculture, and coastal development. These are all factors involved with eutrophication, which is caused by a flooding of nutrients, primarily nitrogen and phosphorus minerals, into the ocean. Coral reefs live in nutrient-poor areas, so when nutrients enter the ocean, there is an increase in algae and cyanobacteria. These organisms use up the nutrient capacity of the ecosystem and then experience a rapid die-off. As the autotrophs decay, oxygen is removed from the ecosystem, causing the animals, such as reef-dwelling fishes, to suffocate as well. The corals are also affected by this algae growth because the algae in the water blocks the sunlight from the coral, which reduces photosynthesis in the coral's symbionts that provide the coral with food. Algae also keeps live coral and dead coral stuck together. Last but not least, we have islander poverty. Many inhabitants around the reef ecosystem live in poverty. They greatly depend on the reef for their livelihoods, and this becomes an economic incentive to harvest the reefs. This, of course, causes damage to the ecosystem. Now it is time to discuss the possible solutions. Seeding coral reefs has shown promise, with transplanted colonies surpassing the reproductive capabilities of wild-grown coral. Seeding also allows rearing of corals under controlled conditions, protecting the young coral during their most environmentally sensitive stage of growth. In addition, small-scale aquaculture for commercially desirable corals may aid preservation of wild reefs by giving the people who dwell in coral-rich areas a livelihood that is still based on the same species, but which does not further degrade the wild reefs. Electrode use on artificial reefs creates microenvironments of high pH, aiding mineral accretion in corals, and gene therapy has been proposed as a method of creating corals and symbionts that can withstand climate change. By incorporating some of these solutions, we can hopefully reduce the threats that coral reefs are facing today.